A Sapphire Running Zone podcast.
Hi everyone, this is Tim from the Sapphire Running Zone, and we are on another of our Runner Stories podcasts, and we're with Melissa for episode 3. Now, Melissa's one of these scoliosis support and research runners, and she is fresh from Sunday's London Marathon. So, Melissa, welcome, and give us a quick summary of what it was like.
Tim, I think reflecting on it now, I can say it was amazing. At the time, it felt very difficult. The weather, just always doing a marathon is hard. It's always going to be difficult, I think. But just the whole experience was amazing. And yeah, highly recommend if anyone has the opportunity to do it, that they should do it. It's just the most special thing I think I've ever done, maybe. It was amazing.
Right, and you're obviously a marathon runner already, having done Valencia. How do the two compare?
It was worlds apart. I think Valencia is very different in that it has the kind of cut-off time, and the crowds were just nowhere near as... I mean, I've been warned about the crowds in London and just how you feel like a celebrity for the day, but nothing really kind of prepared me for how loud and how consistent it would be for pretty much the whole 26 miles. I think particularly kind of the last 10K was just noise and just your name being screamed over and over and over again. And it's like the most wild thing I've ever been through.
Let's rewind a little bit and just go back over your training. So just give us a summary of the sort of highs and lows of your marathon running training.
Sure. So I came into training for London off the back of just doing Valencia in December. My training was going pretty well. I was happy with how it was going. I just wasn't able to be as consistent with always getting as many runs in a week as I would like, just through a mix of reasons really. But I went into London like feeling fit and, kind of feeling not ready, because, I'm never going to be never going to be the most amazing marathon runner, and you're never really going to be prepared fully for 42K, I guess, unless you do it for a living. But I was generally happy with how things had gone. So I felt in a good place standing on the start line on Sunday.
And what did you do during race week? When did you go to the expo, and what was it like leading up to the night before?
So I had my last run on the Wednesday, and then that's just when I was just eating so many carbs, trying to get everything crammed in. I went up to the expo on the Thursday morning, and that was crazy. I mean, I've been to a few expos now, but it was massive, and you just really feel... I've been walking into the Excel Centre because it's just so huge, and you just feel like the weight of what you're about to do kind of hitting you, and it all feels quite emotional. And I happened to bump into my auntie there, who was also running, which was just so random and just so nice. And it's just like finding your name on the wall. I just always love doing that, and like picking everything up, seeing what's going on, seeing who's talking. Yeah, it was, but just try to kind of like keep my feet on the ground and just get lots of food in and lots of sleep in before race morning on Sunday.
Yeah, what time did you get up and get to the start, and what wave were you in?
So I was in red wave 12, which went at 10:55. So I travelled up from Reading. So we got up at 6 to make sure I was kind of eating and prepared and had everything ready to go. We got the train, I think, just before 8. So we were in Greenwich for about 9:30ish. And that all seemed to work really well. There weren't loads of trains going, so I was a bit panicked that if something went wrong, we weren't going to make it. But they had so many tubes, so much signage. It was so well organised. And I think by the time we kind of got into the assembly area and dropped my bag off and, went to the toilet and did some stretching and everything, it wasn't that long to go until the start. So generally, and Greenwich Park was so beautiful. It was just such a nice place to be. Everyone was in such high spirits with the weather as well. So I thought it was actually one of the more relaxed race mornings I think I've had. It felt really smooth and good.
And talk us through your emotions when the gun went off and you started your 26.2 miles.
Yeah, I was stood waiting for the gun to go off, just kind of, getting a bit emotional, thinking, I can't believe I'm actually here, when, we found out about places kind of back in August. So it's been such a long run up to it that it all just... I was like, can't believe is actually here after talking about it for so long. And just kind of that initial rundown, and there's not like a big crowd there. It's just kind of you and the other runners, and it's just the volunteers are clapping you away, which is amazing. But you're just
Yeah.
like, oh my god, I can't believe we're actually about to do this.
And what do you remember from the first half leading up to Tower Bridge? What do you remember about the course and the landmarks and the atmosphere?
I was really trying to, because I remembered our conversation before about really trying to take in the landmark. So I was like waiting for Cutty Sark to appear basically the whole time. And I knew that my cousin was at around mile 12. So I was just thinking, God, it's so hot. And I was just trying to like take in the atmosphere because it's so good even there. And I was just like, oh, God, this is going to be hard if it's this hot the whole way around. But I was just kind of kept focused because I knew that like once I'd seen my cousin, there was going to be a few other people kind of not that far after. So I was like, it's just not that long to go. But I feel like most of the first half is more of a blur than the second half because I was just like really trying to get that first half done and get to like my loved ones basically.
So you'd agreed exactly where you were going to meet friends and family then?
It was so I'd kind of said to people like, tell me what you're wearing, tell me where you're going to be, and like text me if that changes. So I had my headphones in, but I changed the settings so that if I got messages, they'd be read out to me so I could hear, so I could kind of, so I didn't have to get my phone out. And so I knew like that they'd be on the left hand side of the road and she was wearing a red top. So I like just kept an eye out once I kind of hit that area. And then I'd had similar from my family and friends and my boyfriend and stuff, which all seemed to generally work quite well. I think once I knew the kind of area that people were going to be in, it made it easier to actually spot them. I think I saw everyone that I had lined up, so it all seemed to work quite well. And actually, I think when my boyfriend met up with some of my friends and they had a new area around like 21 miles, they actually hadn't said where they were going to be, but somehow I just managed to spot them. I think maybe from the pure noise, it all seemed to work quite well.
Oh, that's really good because that does make such a difference, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
it can be such a downer if you arrange to meet people and they're not there. You sort of look
yeah.
forward to it, and then oh my god, they're not there, and it can play on your head quite significantly. So it's
Mhm.
a strange one because you run over Tower Bridge, which is incredibly emotional part of the
Yeah.
course, and then you turn right to head back to sort of Docklands, and then you see all the people coming the other way. It's quite a wave of emotions. What were you feeling around that point?
Yeah, so I was looking at the pictures of me going over Tower Bridge last night, and I think I've just like jaw dropped. Like it's just amazing because you just can't believe that it's there. But then there's also this voice in the back of your head, like you're not even quite halfway yet. Calm down. And then you can see everyone coming the other way, and you're just like, God, well, that will be me in like 2 hours, maybe. It's already going to be a while away. And actually, although the underpass around that point had been blocked, so my boyfriend couldn't get across, which did make me panic slightly because he had my spare drink. But I managed to see him kind of across the road, and I was like, I'll just deal with that later. I don't really have the time to think about it. But I think knowing that you're kind of coming into like Docklands and all that area, I knew that that was going to be a bit more of a slog with what I'd kind of like heard from people. And it feels quite kind of intricate because you're going around lots of different turns and got quite narrow in places. And that was probably the least enjoyable part of it for me, just because it felt like we were just stuck in the city for so long. I was like, please just get me going back the other way to where I can see people coming that way. So I know that I'm on like the homeward stretch now.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it is a bit like that. You start going away from the finish, don't you? And you just don't want
Yeah.
to be going in that direction. You want to be going the other way. So when you do start going that way, I think psychologically that makes a big difference. Even though you know that embankment stretch is a long stretch
Yeah,
and it seems to go on forever, but it's you're getting closer to the finish all the time, which is so important. So
exactly.
how were you feeling when you got along there? You knew you were going to do it. You knew you were going to finish.
Yeah. Yeah.
Again, that's such a fantastic area for landmarks, isn't it? You can sort of look around and there's so much going on there. I'm glad you were sort of taking it all in because it's so easy on that stretch to just be thinking about the finish and not thinking about all these amazing things that are around you.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit more about the headphones. I like what you were saying there about the texts, because arranging to see friends and family in exactly the right spot is an intricate process itself. and having your phone, you don't always want to be getting out. So just talk us through in a bit more detail what you did with your headphones all the way around and how you used them to find friends and family.
Sure. So I didn't actually start the race with them in. I was going to try and see how it went because I knew that kind of I changed all my phone settings. So like the only notifications that I would get were like messages and WhatsApps. And I knew that they would come up on my watch. So I wasn't too, and then I thought, oh, then like, I was like, don't think everything's coming through. And it was kind of maybe around mile 3 that I was like, oh, I could do with kind of a bit of backup. But I had my AirPods on kind of transparency and quite quiet so I could still hear all of the crowds because there's so much music going on as well. You do kind of want to enjoy like listening to, there's people DJing like along the whole route. You want to make sure you enjoy it and hear the crowds and hear people shouting your name. So I just tried to keep it quiet, but I knew that I had kind of like the backup of my like tried and true playlist, and then made sure that I was taking note of like the messages that were coming through, which was helpful because obviously plans do change or like people can't get to places or one of my friends kind of moved across the road because she thought that was a better spot. So, it meant that I didn't have to look both ways or wasn't looking the wrong way, which did make all the difference. And I think even for maybe like the last 10K, they weren't playing anything. I was just listening to the crowd, but I could still get those messages through. And it was also kind of a way that I could just shut off the noise if I needed to. So I found that worked really well. I mean, they probably would have run out of battery if I'd had them in for the whole thing, but it seemed to work quite well. So I was quite pleased with how I did that, just to make sure that I could try and see as many people as possible. I had like people were texting me as well to be like, oh, mile 1 done, or like 5 miles done, and like keep going, you can do it, which actually really helped too. I wasn't like expecting it, but it was really nice to get those while I was going as well.
So you didn't actually use them for the music itself. You use them primarily as a way of keeping in touch with people.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's really interesting. That's a definite positive, isn't it? And I think it's interesting that you said about that you use them at times to sort of block out the noise, because it does get like that every now and again, doesn't it? It's almost
Yeah.
like sort of like just give me some peace. I just need a mile to get my head together and try and deal with what's going on here, because it is, the noise is absolutely overpowering
Exactly.
at times. And
It's so loud, and especially when I was kind of taking little walking breaks at times, and people would still it's so nice that people were still, like, shouting your name, but I'm also like, "Shut up. I'm not feeling good right now. Let me just catch my breath and get my heart rate down, and I'll run in a minute."
yeah, yeah, no, that's actually quite a good way of using them. I didn't really, we haven't had that conversation with other people about that, but that is a really good point. So, what did you do with your nutrition? Were you happy with the way that you dealt with the water and the gels?
Yeah, so I tried to make sure I had, like, lots of water throughout it as well, like taking a bottle almost every time they had them, even just and making use of the showers that they had to kind of just get water over myself because it was so hot. Started with because I've just been training really with Lucozade Sport because I just found that works quite well for me. And I had a bottle to start with, and then the plan was to see my boyfriend at about halfway and he'd give me the other one, but obviously that didn't pan out. So I was slightly panicked, but I was like, it's fine, I can kind of make do if I need to. And then not that far further down, maybe a mile or 2 down, there was one of the Lucozade stops or like gel spots or whatever but they had the bottles. So I was like, I know you're just giving out the cups, but please, can I have a bottle? It's like, I missed him and I just need it. And luckily, suddenly a bottle just appeared in my hand. And I was like, thank you so much. And just
Wow.
carried on. And so luckily, because the volunteers just let me have another bottle, that helped and just kind of like cleared my mind then, and I could just keep going. So actually, and I felt really good after, to be honest. I made sure I had like a protein bar in my drop-off bag, and I just had that like as soon as I finished, and I actually felt really good generally after. So I think it all kind of went to plan, which was really nice.
So, how many gels did you take on the way round?
I didn't have any.
You didn't have any, so you focused purely on the Lucozade Sport. Okay,
Yeah,
and that was exactly what you did during your training. No gels at
yeah.
all. Okay, that's interesting. I think you're the first person we've spoken to that didn't take the gels. Was there a reason for that?
I just found that they don't agree with me that well. And there's probably, could spend more time finding a different brand because I know that when I was having them, they were making a difference. But I just found that I don't know, even just fell into accidentally having Lucozade, and I just found that helped. I think the more consistent kind of continuous, taking that on throughout the whole thing rather than just like almost shotting a gel and then carrying on. I don't really like the texture, and it just I just don't love them. So I focused on that, and during my training it all seemed to be going quite well. So it works for me. So I
And how
keep
did
doing.
you deal with it on the long run then? How many did you take, like one bottle with you, or did you leave them at certain spots around your long run circuit?
Yeah, so kind of depending, as soon as it was kind of over a half, I'd have another one available, but I'd usually kind of plot my route so I could like quickly stop at home and grab another one or just leave it somewhere in the car or whatever. And so, yeah.
Good. Well, that's a good way of doing it. Sometimes they just don't agree with people, and you need to recognise that, because
Mm.
if you get into a situation, which I have many times on race day, and you do have a reaction, it's not pleasant, and
Not pleasant, yeah.
it can completely ruin your whole race experience. So just share with us your emotions in those last couple of miles, and when you went down Birdcage Walk past Big Ben, were there tears shed?
The tears didn't fully come until the real like last home straight coming round from Buckingham Palace. But I saw one of my best friends was just under Waterloo Bridge, so that was like pretty close to the end. And seeing her was like the last little boost I needed. And it was just so lovely, and just like the crowds there are just. It's just so loud, and everybody is so emotional because they're finishing. And it was just incredible, and yeah, it was just like so overwhelming. You're just like instant tears because you just can't believe that you've done it, and to be coming down that like iconic stretch on the Mall is just, yeah, it's so crazy. It's just nothing like you could ever describe.
It's quite overwhelming down there, isn't it? I mean, there's been a few times I've done it where you almost finish, but you want to go run back up to Buckingham Palace and come back down again. Just like, oh, this bit I want to do again, because it was just so unbelievable. It's so, I don't know what it is, but when you walk there when the marathon's not on, it just doesn't seem, the road doesn't seem as wide, or it just doesn't
Yeah,
seem as iconic. But when you come down there on marathon day,
yeah.
it's something you'll never ever forget. That's
Mm-mm.
absolutely
It's
for sure.
incredible.
What would what are your tips for next year's runners, both in the training and on race day? What sort of expert tips can you share with people?
I think training wise is, I think one thing that I think I've mentioned this before is like, don't be too hard on yourself if you don't make all of your runs. It won't throw you completely out the window. If you have to have a week off for whatever reason, you can get back to it. And sometimes, even if it's just getting out for 5K instead of a 12K, it's about getting the miles in. And just, yeah, trying to be consistent, and also just don't push yourself too crazily. You want to make the marathon, so there's just no point risking it or making up runs by, running 5 days in 1 week compared to spread across 2 weeks. It's just not worth it. So that would be, and also lots of strength training, I think really helps to really try and build your knee strength was one thing that I found always helped, because I just haven't had really any knee kind of niggles at all. And I think part of that is to do with making sure I still went to the gym. And with the kind of race itself, it's definitely check in with how you're feeling on the day. I think London especially is one where, especially if you're kind of more of an average runner pace, you're not necessarily going to be getting a PB, especially if the weather was like it was on Sunday. And there were so many areas in Canary Wharf, kind of place where you're having to walk because it's just too busy and you just actually can't get through. And so it's, yeah, just the goal should be to finish rather than anything else. And I think that's one thing that I've seen a lot of people talking about since Sunday, is making sure, like, so many people didn't finish or were sat in an ambulance for a couple of hours and then finished. And I just thought, oh God, it's just not worth it. It's better to just slow it down. The time doesn't matter. The person who finishes first and the person who finishes last gets the same medal. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And obviously, you guys did something extra special, which was raise so much money for charity. And let's talk about that. Because you're now only £25 off of 3,000, which is absolutely brilliant. I know we talked
Yeah.
about that before, whether you thought you could get there. You obviously are going to. Even if you have to put it in yourself, you'll get to
Yeah,
3,000.
exactly. I will be putting it myself if no one else does.
I mean, it's a fantastic achievement, and I'm trying to think how much you were on when we last spoke. It was about two and a bit, I think. So just give us a quick summary of how you raised all of the money and how you got that last 1,000, because getting to your initial target of 2,000 is an amazing achievement, but
Yeah.
then it's pushing on, isn't it? And that can often be sort of a tough part, that last stretch.
Yeah, so like most of the donations have come through work and colleagues just being so generous, and lots of friends and family. I think friends and family have come more in the latter stages. I think just because they know that they have, they can just ask me for the link at any time. I guess in a way that some colleagues maybe wouldn't, or they are more likely to do it when they see your email. But I try to just keep on it with the emails really, on social media, and just keep plugging it and using different forms to get different audiences, and it's just worked really well. Yeah, I think I can't remember exactly how much I was on when we last spoke. I think it was maybe about 2,300, something like
Uh,
that. So there's definitely been a lot. I think, like you said, when we've said before, the kind of some of the busiest time is just before the race, and I think that was definitely a big reminder to people of like, oh, that's coming up. And also this, we've already raised so much money. It'd be amazing to get to 3. And so that's definitely been where a lot have come in. And then there's been again another probably couple of hundred just since Sunday, which has been amazing. But I think, yeah, that extra grand, I feel like hitting the target is obviously amazing. And you're like, I'm so close to the target. And then you're like, well, actually, now I've hit it, I want to raise another grand. And so that feels a bit more difficult to it feels a bit cheeky almost to be like, well, please keep donating. But luckily everyone's just been amazing and so supportive. And yeah, hopefully I'll hit it later today, which would be great.
I'm sure you will. So, for those that that haven't listened to previous episodes, your focus on your work colleagues at the start, because you started quite early with your fundraising,
Yeah.
which was key. So, what was sort of the initial approach then? You segmented your friends, family, work colleagues, and sent them slightly different messages. Is that right?
Yeah, so work, I kind of like, because we're generally quite a sociable bunch. We kind of will talk about things going on in our lives, and I've basically been just talking about running for a while. So, and then I think everyone's pretty good when you know that you've got a London Marathon place, and they're generally very supportive of everyone. So I just kind of just kept talking about it, and people would be asking about how training's going and things like that. And so I just sent an email around and just tried to make it kind of a bit funny and just get people hooked, and did a bit of like a clickbait thing with my Just Giving page and saying that I like all my x-rays are on my Just Giving page. You can go and look at those. So I just kind of did that. And then friends, it would be like whenever I would post on Instagram that I was like going out for a run or whatever, I'd be like, here's my donation link as well, by the way. And just try and get a few more kind of reminders each time that was happening. So it, yeah, generally the approach seemed to work quite well. And I think it's just, yeah, it's just been amazing, really.
A lot of the early activity then or the work activity was email based as opposed to
Yeah.
social media based. So, of the 3,000 that you've raised, how much of it do you think came as a result of email versus social media?
Emails like to my work colleagues directly, I would honestly say maybe over 2 grand probably. And then obviously family and friends have been like equally as generous, if not more so. But there's just not as many of them because I just work in quite a big team and have just had just amazing, amazing support.
That's fantastic. But that is interesting because obviously there is such a huge focus on social media as a way of raising money. But I think people can lose sight of the value of email. And you've
Yeah.
clearly shown that in a work context, particularly, email is absolutely crucial. So you had it on you. Did you have the email signature with a link underneath, that kind of thing?
I didn't even do that actually. It was a good idea. I wish I had done that. But I would just kind of periodically send out emails. But because I think it's more conducive to being able to send a slightly longer email. So there's
Mm.
kind of a bit more explanation. I could put a bit more about the charity, my kind of running journey and all that kind of stuff. I think it just makes it a bit more personable. I try and like time when I sent them as well. So it would either kind of be first thing on a Monday or a Friday, when kind of those are the times where people kind of get settled into the day, or kind of they're thinking about the weekend type of thing. So you get people's focus a bit more, I think. And when people have 5 minutes to spare to read your email and donate. So I think I tried to be selective with when I did it, or maybe like just after payday, things like that. So I just kept doing it basically.
That's really important, the fact that you took the time to even think about time of day when you were sending this stuff out, because it isn't as simple. For some people it is if they've got huge number of followers. For most people it's not as simple as just bashing a social media post out. There's a lot more to it than that, and you've clearly shown that. And the fact that you were very comfortable all the way through your marathon journey, weren't you, in terms of your fundraising? It was never a stress because you started early and you were on it the whole time, and here you are now comfortably beating target and about to hit 3,000. And it comes with planning and spending time, doesn't it? Because it is a dual process, it's about running training and the fundraising.
Exactly, yeah.
So what's next? That's the big question.
I've already got my friends trying to get me signed up to more marathons. Next actual race I've got booked is the Bridge Run, which goes between Denmark and Sweden. That's in like 7 weeks. So it's only a half. In comparison, that'll feel like a breeze, I hope. But I'm really excited about that one. It's a bit different, and this is only like the 3rd time it's ever happened or something. So that one's set to be pretty amazing. But yeah, and then I've got Wokingham half marathon booked for next year, and a 10k around Silverstone later this year as well. So a few more races still in the diary, but no actual other marathons booked just yet.
When do you think you would be able to fundraise again seriously, like 2-3 grand? How long do you think you could do it again next year, or do you think it's like 2 years' time?
I think personally, I'd want to leave it 2 years, just because I think I've been conscious of how generous people have been. And I think if I was to kind of pick up again in September, like similar time to I did last year, I would just feel guilty, which I know you shouldn't, because it is all for a good cause and stuff. I feel like I've battered people's inboxes and social media pages for the last kind of 9 months. If I start doing that again in a few months' time, I feel like I might be pushing my luck. So for me, I think it would have to be 2 years, but I guess it just depends on how generous other people, in their lives are.
Good. Thank you for that. You've done an amazing job. Everything was textbook. You're an example to everybody in terms of your training and your fundraising, and you had the most amazing day, and that's not a coincidence. You get out what you put in. That's key. So good luck with the next stages, and hopefully we can have another chat when you've done the Scandinavian adventure.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Tim.
Hi, Will here from Scoliosis Support and Research. If you're looking for a great cause to run for, we'd love to have you on board. Drop me a message at fundraising@ssr.org.uk. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks for listening to this Sapphire Running Zone podcast. Keep checking back as we have lots more podcasts coming soon.